Welcome into the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chris Daughtry. We are breaking down this Week 2 matchup between the Crimson Tide and Louisiana-Monroe. It's first home game this year for Alabama, and they open up as 36.5-point favorites. You guys know what that means, right? Under this new Kalen DeBoer staff, means we're probably going to lose this game. No, I'm kind of kidding on that one. But it seems like every single time Alabama is favored big in a game, they go out there and they don't play very well. So hopefully this week they can go out there and they can really muster up some energy and some effort, because there's absolutely no reason why Alabama should not cover the spread and beat the absolute crap out of this football team. They're better on the field. They should have better coaching. So we'll see what happens this week against Louisiana-Monroe. Let me know down in the comments section, though. What is your confidence level in this Alabama coaching staff right now? Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. Scale it for me 1 to 10. 1, you don't believe in them whatsoever. They are all on the hot seat, and they should all be fired at this point. Or 10, you think Alabama's going to win the national championship. At this point, I don't see that happening either. But definitely somewhere in the middle for me. But let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. All right, here are some injury updates for the Crimson Tide. And the unfortunate one that we got last night, Jah-Marien Beaman ended up suffering a leg injury at practice yesterday, and he is expected to miss the entire 2025 season. That is a massive blow for Alabama's defensive tackle room. Ryan Williams, he's still day-to-day with that concussion right now. Big updates from Kalen DeBoer last night on Jam Miller and Tim Keenan. They're still going to be out this week, but we'll see. They might be returning earlier than I even thought. Jah-Marien Latham, he's going to be questionable in this game, but I do think that, he's kind of working his way back. Kalen DeBoer said he's doing better than expected, but they're still unsure about the weekend. Isaia Horton, he's going to be probable for this game. I think he just kind of got a little bit banged up during the game last week, but man, that Jah-Marien Beaman injury is a killer for Alabama's defensive tackle room, and they're going to have some of these young guys step up. You see last week during that Florida State game, you had 6 different defensive tackles play on that interior of the defensive line. James Smith got the most snaps there. Edric Hill had 29. London Simmons, the true freshman, had 22 snaps. Isaiah Faga had 21. Jah-Marien Beaman had 21. And then Kelby Collins had 3 snaps there. I think it was kind of, both at that Bandit spot and kind of, they just lined him up in different spots. Kane Womack said that they wanted to utilize him in different ways like that. But man, those guys are just going to have to be better now with Jah-Marien Beaman out. Tim Keenan also going to be out for this game as well. We'll tell you guys in a second here some updates on Tim Keenan. But, yeah, man, like I said, this defensive tackle room has just got to be better than they were last week. Saw on some film that, you had multiple guys plugging up the same hole. They just got to get it together, man, because these teams like this, they're going to try to do the exact same thing. The playbook to beat this Alabama defense is out there. So hopefully they can get their crap together, because we're only in the second game of the year. It's going to be a long season if they cannot really step up here for that interior defensive line. Another injury concern is what I'll call it here is Danny Lewis Jr. Kalen DeBoer did not mention him during his press conference, the teleconference, or on Hey Coach last night. But he did not play against Florida State last week, and I do think that's a big concern, because Alabama does love to utilize those tight ends in, run blocking schemes. They like to use multiple tight ends in different ways. Josh Cuevas played 63 snaps in that game. Caleb Edwards, the true freshman, was the next guy up there with 18 snaps in that game, and then Jay Lindsey only got 1 snap on the offensive side of the ball. So, man, Danny Lewis Jr., he's banged up last year. He was banged up during spring, banged up during summer, banged up during fall. When is this guy not going to be banged up? I'm not quite sure, but, he is a big piece for Alabama's offense going out there. They utilize him as a blocker a lot, and they would like to anyways, but, going out there, putting a true freshman out there, it's tough, to replace a guy like Danny Lewis Jr. So we'll continue to see just kind of how he progresses and if he's going to be out there next week, because once you get into that, stretch of SEC matchups, man, you really, really want him out there. All right, another update on Tim Keenan as well. Kalen DeBoer said last night that there is a possibility, big emphasis on possibility, that he will be out there for that Wisconsin game. And I think my biggest fear, concern right now is I just hope they're not rushing him back too early. My fear is that because, you see some of the panic right now at that interior defensive line spot. Now you also lose Jah-Marien Beaman, that they're, just going to rush him back. And, this just kind of becomes another, we've got guys banged up there, or, we've got guys fighting through some things kind of excuse that we saw all last season as well. The coaching staff, prides themselves on developing some of these younger guys. We're going to find out if, how good they really are at developing some of those guys, because right now you're depending on a lot of some of those younger players along the interior. And I just really hope that they don't rush back Tim Keenan, because you think you need to at the end of the day. Same thing goes here with Jam Miller as well. Kalen DeBoer saying that there's going to be a possibility that he's going to be able to come back for that Wisconsin game. It was originally reported that he was going to be back hopefully for that Georgia game. Obviously, you got Wisconsin and then a bye week and then that Georgia game as well. But kind of the same thing. We saw how this played out last year, especially at that running back position. They said all year long that the running backs were banged up and they were kind of fighting through things. But, I think the reality is that this system, this offensive system, they just do not commit to the run. Look, last year under Ryan Grubb at the Seattle Seahawks, their offensive rush play rate was 37% run plays called. That was 28th in the NFL. And I was called crazy for being worried about that when Alabama ended up hiring Ryan Grubb. But, Ryan Grubb said this past week that he wants the running backs to get 25 to 30 touches a game. I would personally love to see 35 designated running back carries. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but I think that if you get those offensive linemen in a groove moving forward, in run blocks, instead of having them drop back, pass blocking 40 plus times a game, I think that they would help them, get in a groove in terms of, just getting up in some dude's face, moving that line of scrimmage, forward instead of them getting blown up like we saw, in the third drive and on for that offensive line. So, I hope that they continue or start committing to the run and not just abandon it like they did in that Florida State game, because I think feeding these running backs is going to be key in the SEC and having success for this Kalen DeBoer staff. All right, we'll continue with some more stuff here in just a second, but the Tennessee football report is beating our butts right now in our September sub battle. I know it's only September 4th, but they're absolutely crushing us right now. And, we're upset about Alabama's performance on the field. We should be upset about the Tennessee football talk also beating the crap out of us in our sub battle. So do not miss any Alabama football news, rumors. We put that short out last night for you guys on Jah-Marien Beaman. So don't miss any Alabama news. We're also going to be live for our Alabama watch parties all season long. So get down there, join the community here at the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. All right, so, kind of my take on that Florida State game was Ryan Grubb kind of went into panic mode. The first drive, they had 55 rushing yards. The rest of the game, they only had 16 rushing yards. And, you were actually getting some push early on from your offensive line. One drive doesn't go your way, and then all of a sudden, Florida State gets one touchdown, and, you're down by one touchdown in the first quarter, and all of a sudden you just get pass happy and you go away from the run. And it doesn't help that, Ty Simpson was pressing at times. There was a couple times he bailed on some clean pockets. He did miss some open receivers, but the wide receivers got to help him out too, man. Ryan Williams, your superstar, had 3 drops in that Florida State game, especially some of those where, he was lined up in the slot. He was kind of going across the middle. It kind of looked a little bit scared at times. Josh Cuevas also had a drop, which, if I'm not mistaken, was on a pretty big third down late in the game. But, I want to see a guy like Kevin Riley, get more touches in this game and really going forward until we get Jam Miller back, because I thought he was the best running back for Alabama against Florida State. I want them to feed these running backs. You have to be able to run the ball to win games in the SEC. And it's not just the SEC. It's going against anybody in the top 10, whether it's, when you get into the playoffs and, you're maybe facing an Ohio State or a Penn State or somebody else like that. You have to be able to commit to the run. And just because you go down by one touchdown in the second quarter does not mean you need to bail on the run game. Feed these running backs. Give them 40 carries a game. And I think you can see this offense just continue to grow and get a whole lot better. All right, we'll continue here in just a second with some more things to watch for this game this weekend. But today's show is brought to you guys by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. I personally use PrizePicks for so many different types of sporting events, whether it's professional football, baseball, basketball, college sports, MMA, and so much more. PrizePicks is a ton of fun, and if you guys know ball, you can win real money all season long on PrizePicks. Professional football is officially back, and you guys, if you haven't done it already, make sure you get this Dak Prescott passing yards projection in. It is the NFL max discount. Good for tonight only, so make sure you guys get this in before kickoff. All he needs is a half passing yard. That is absolutely going to hit, so make sure you get that into your PrizePicks lineups. And PrizePicks always gives you freebies, so make sure if you see those, get those into your PrizePicks lineups. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. PrizePicks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out on your lineup if it isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. So download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link is going to be down in the description of today's show. It's also going to be down at the pinned comment of today's show as well. It's PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, some things to watch in this game, because I'll be completely honest, I don't necessarily think ULM, I don't want to focus on them. I don't want to talk about matchups or any of their players, because really this game is going to be about what Alabama does on the field. You should be able to go out there, and if you have a good week of practice, if you actually have some intentional effort, you should go out there and blow them out. Intentional effort is the easiest thing you can do. And I'll explain what intentional effort means here in just a second as well. Bray Hubbard got cooked on social media this week, and I think rightfully so, but it wasn't just him. There was a lot of players out there that were loafing. I thought the linebackers looked slow. They looked unprepared. Justin Jefferson didn't look very good. Deontay Lawson still, unfortunately, coming back from that injury. He looked slow as well. And, there were some guys on the defensive line as well that I thought, Jordan Renaud is one that I saw a lot that, I thought they were playing hard, but they weren't necessarily doing their jobs. They were trying to play hero ball, make sacks, but, they weren't maintaining their gaps. Multiple times you saw two guys playing in the same gap. How does that help anybody in the run game? It's setting the edges, doing things like that, pushing, the offense back inside because nobody else is outside. You got to set the edge to have some of your other guys that are on the inside help you out and have that swarm defense. They call themselves the swarm defense, but we really did not see that at all last week. And, specifically with these linebackers as well, I thought Nakai Hill-Green had a really rough game against Florida State. There's that one highlight that just keeps going around where he's in the right gap. And then right before the snap, he shuffles over to the wrong gap, and then, it's a 5-6 yard run right into the gap that he was already in. I don't know if that's coaching, or I don't know if he was just kind of going off on a whim, but, these linebackers did not look good at all. So I kind of wonder if guys like Caden Jones or maybe a QB Reese or maybe even Abdul Sanders, one of these younger guys, I kind of think Caden Jones or QB Reese would be the next guy up there. I kind of wonder if they get more opportunity in this football game this week, because those linebackers, man, I had a lot of confidence with these guys going into this season, but man, I know it's a funky offense, a lot of lateral movement, but they just did not look good at all against that game against Florida State. I want to see Ty let it loose, man. I thought you could see multiple times during that game last week where Ty was kind of bailing out of the pocket a little bit too early in the first half at times. But then in the second half, you could kind of see him, kind of fighting that urge back. I want to see him make some growth this week because, like I said, I don't think it was all on Ty Simpson in that game. Did he miss some throws? Absolutely. If this stat line is like 23 for 35 instead of 23 for 43, I think that actually looks a whole lot better. But You got to get some help from the wide receivers. You got to get some help from the offensive line at times as well. And it's still on Ty, too. He's got to do a whole lot better. I want to see him let it loose. Kalen DeBoer even said in the press conference, I know, Ryan Grubb said in his press conference this week as well that, he's just got to trust himself. Throwing guys open opposed to waiting until they get open to actually throw the ball, use some anticipation. I think Ty Simpson's still good. Saw some good things from him. Saw him working through some things in that first game last week. So, I think he's going to be better this week. And honestly, I thought he was one of those players in his post-game press conference where he actually seemed pissed. And, he told the Alabama fans they're going to get it fixed. And, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt until we see it. And it's not even this week. It's going to be against Wisconsin. It's going to be against Georgia. It's going to be going to South Carolina. Can you get those things fixed for those games? I think they're going to try. And I think these players, especially Ty Simpson, is going to be key at, fixing that, letting it loose here on Saturday. So do you want to see any of the other quarterbacks this week? Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment or down at the comments of today's video, whether it's Austin Mack or Keon Russell. Personally, I would love to see some other quarterbacks because I would love for Alabama to get up 42-0 in the first half and then they go out there and play, get some reps in the second half as well. That's how I would love to see it happen. I don't want this to be like a South Florida game 2 years ago where, Ty goes out there and struggles in the first half and, you have to put somebody else in there. Then there's this whole quarterback controversy. I don't want that to happen. I want Alabama to get out to a big lead, and then we see some of those quarterbacks. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's show. Things to watch number 3 here. I actually want to see some leadership from this team. If things go, even if things are going right, I want to see some guys with some fire. Like, I think it was, either Kane Womack or it was one of the main coaches. They talked about the leadership on the sideline. You haven't really seen that the past couple of years, even under Nick Saban, kind of started lacking a little bit as well. The camera, maybe we just don't see it, but, the camera pans over to the sidelines and everybody's just kind of, looking around, not really, it just doesn't seem like they have any kind of fire under them. I want to see guys, if things are going right, if things are going wrong, I want to see guys actually going over there and coaching each other up. It just makes me so mad that, in years past, you had some accountability, some, player-led accountability on this team. It's not just the coaching staff. It needs to start there, but, it needs to be these players, too, holding themselves accountable when things are going right and when things are going wrong. So I would love to see more leadership from this team in this Week 2 matchup against Louisiana-Monroe.